Next on the agenda is audience items. We have one speaker tonight, Mr. Ken Kinzora. I'm not sure if that microphone is on. You can be there, but we need to just turn the microphone on.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Dupree. My name is Kenny Kinzora. I am the supervisor of Fort Bend ISD's Technical Education Center. I'm sure that you've all heard the phrase win-win. Well, I'm here this evening to inform you of a win-win school-to-workplace model that we have established between FLOR and the Technical Education Center. 3 years ago, Brenna Cosby of the Fort Bend ISD Education Foundation introduced me to Barbara Jones as they came to tour our facilities. Barbara is a senior manager of community and public affairs at FLOR. As Barbara entered our welding class, she explained that FLOR is always looking for welders. She explained that welders are at the top demand, and as they say, the rest is history. Since this first meeting, Barbara and FLOR have donated money, equipment, and their talents to assist our students in our welding program. We have received over $23,000 to buy new equipment. FLOR has also donated new and used equipment to supplement our programs. But most of all, Barbara and her co-workers spend time in our classrooms advising our students of welding career opportunities. Their efforts are paying off. This past summer, 2 of our 2015 graduates, Raul Lara and Tricelyn Bonner, both who completed the 2-year welding program at the Technical Education Center, were hired by FLOR as welders. We wish them all well as they start their new careers. I'd like to take a minute to thank Barbara for her hard work and influence at FLOR to help our students. Barbara, would you please stand? Lastly, thank you, Board of Trustees and Dr. Dupree, for supporting programs like ours. We truly inspire and equip all students to pursue futures beyond what they can imagine. Thank you. Have a great school year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here tonight, and thank you, Ms. Jones, for being here as well. Our next agenda item is information. Dr. Dupree.
Yes, ma'am. Beth Martinez, our Chief of Staff and Strategic Planning, is going to present an update on our strategic planning process and kind of where we are today and where we're headed during the coming months. Beth?
You have to turn it on. Good evening. All right, I'm very pleased to share with you this evening a high-level overview of our strategic planning process. Going to give you a indication of where we are and then a roadmap for where we're headed. I want to draw your attention to the quote there on the first page of the presentation. Plans are nothing, planning is everything, something Dwight D. Eisenhower said. And really, as we walk through this evening, I want you to recognize the importance of the planning process. And we're on target to present to you our strategic plan in October. But without a clear, well-defined planning process and collaboration along the way within that planning process, then the plan that we would give you in October would really be meaningless. So I hope that you're able to really get a very good idea of where we're headed in our strategic planning process from this presentation this evening. On the screen is the graphic that we have used. It's a continuous improvement cycle, and I'll be speaking to you about each component of this graphic and how it drives our planning process this evening. The most important thing, what's in the middle, really the heart and soul of our planning process, the foundation, if you will, of our planning and working together in our teams is there in the center. And the center, if you look closely, the very center is the core beliefs and commitments. So all of our department division plans and ultimately our district strategic plan will be based on the core beliefs and commitments that the board has created and adopted. We are focused on alignment within our planning process to the mission and vision and goals and priorities, as well as policy. So as we are working in our various departments to create our department plan, we're ensuring that there is that alignment to the mission and vision, certainly to the goals and priorities, and then with policy. And throughout the planning process, which is that continuous process moving forward, we're reviewing policy, as you know, and we're reviewing those administrative procedures that support policy, or our marching orders, if you will, the policy, so that we make sure that we have alignment within all that we're doing. At the bottom of the center of that interior, the heart and soul, are our core competencies and our tightly held expectations. So as we plan, we want to make sure that everything that we're putting in place also aligns with what is very important to us and drives our work. Just as a reminder, the tightly held expectations were really created in tandem with the mission, vision, and align with the goals and priorities of the district. And it's the mechanism for ensuring that every time we get together as administrators for a meeting or for an opportunity or a discussion, that we're really focused on the right things, that we're focused on learning, focused on collaborative culture, focused on results orientation, and focused on organizational climate. So our plans need to reflect that in all areas. I'll take you back to that graphic. We're going to spend some time really kind of dissecting this and looking at what does this mean, and what does it mean in terms of what the deliverable for you in October, the plan that you're going to receive. So if you'll notice, there's some color variations within this continuous improvement cycle, and it's circular, a plan, do, check, act, denoting that continuous improvement, and they're colored sections. The first section, the plan section, is comprised of assess, plan, align, and collaborate. And you see that it's all one color to show that that's one part of the process. Notice some dotted lines between three of those phases there, between plan, align, and collaborate. That's just to guide us in that there's not one that comes before the other or one that is more important than the other. But as we go through the planning, we're aligning and collaborating. We're ensuring that alignment to the heart and soul of what's important to us, our why, if you will, and we're collaborating with each other and with our stakeholders as we work through the planning phase, which is where we are now in that planning phase. Do is the execution of that well-defined and well-communicated plan. And then the check portion is monitoring and evaluating. And it's important to note that as we're planning, we're building those measures into our plan. We're identifying multiple measures. We're looking at what is important to drive our success. What data do we need to look at to show whether we're performing at the level we need to be performing at? And then when are we going to be monitoring, and how are we going to report how we're doing based on the data that we are measuring? So the check portion of that is monitoring those outcomes and evaluating how are we doing. Are we on track to meet our target? And then the act portion is the adjustment. If we're not on target, if we show that we're not moving toward the goal, then what do we need to do? What do we need to adjust within our plan? So even though you will receive a plan in October, it is about the planning. It's really a working document, and we will continue to monitor and adjust as necessary and begin the entire continuous improvement process again with regard to those adjustments that might be made throughout the year. So let's dive more deeply into each one of the sections. I mentioned that we're in the plan phase right now. The plan phase is made up of the assess, plan, align, and collaborate. And the assess portion of that phase of the process is really all of the departments have spent a great deal of time assessing their need. What does their data tell them? What do we need to do? What data do we have? Student data, performance data, survey data. We've conducted SWOT analysis to tell us our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in each department, and ensure that our weaknesses don't become our threats as we move through that process as a part of our needs. I mentioned that we're determining, do we have the right data? Multiple measures are very important, and while on the academic side, of course, we have our STAR data, and that's very important to monitor performance. We want to ensure that we have multiple measures. So as a part of this assess and kind of into the plan part of this phase, we have developed or brought together two different groups, an academic task force to look at our scorecard and dashboards, creation of those, and then an operations task force to look at the operations side of our performance. What data do we have, and what platforms do we need to be able to communicate the performance and the progress that we're making toward our targets. So that's a part of the assess and plan component, and you'll see more information. You'll receive a great deal of information about that in October, as well as a glimpse at what those dashboards and scorecards will look like coming to you in the coming weeks as we provide updates to you. The plan portion is really planning the work. And again, simultaneously, we're planning and aligning and collaborating. So we're assuring that alignment to everything we hold important and collaborating with each other to make sure that anything that might be in one department's plan that may impact another, that they're having those discussions and making plans that are cross-functional or creating plans that are cross-functional and not in silos, if you will, or not in isolation of each other, so that we have that synergy and that movement towards success moving forward. So that's where we are now. Once we have fully developed and reviewed and finalized the plan portion, then we'll move into execute, where we'll begin working the work, planning the work and working our plan. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the check, where we will monitor our measures and be able to report to you on a quarterly basis how we're doing on those district goals and priorities, how we're doing on the measures that we've identified as being important, and then are there any adjustments that need to be made, and if so, what are those adjustments, and how are we going to make the changes moving forward, and what can you as a board expect to see as an outcome of those adjustments. So as President Eisenhower said, planning is everything. And Stephen Covey, there's a quote from Stephen Covey that I just love, and it says, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And one of our hopeful outcomes of this planning process is that we are conducting business in a proactive way, that we're really creating plans that will help us to schedule our priorities and make sure that we're paying attention to the big rocks and doing what is important to move forward toward our goal of student success and creating those futures for our students in a very strategic way, and that we have a mechanism for continuous review of our work so that we can provide opportunities for improvement along the way. So our immediate next steps, as I said, we are in the plan phase now. Departments submitted their plans on Friday. And so we're collecting all of those and putting them into a matrix of sorts to make sure that we have consistency and alignment across the board. I'll be bringing that information to E-Team, so if we have any potential competing priorities, then we will have some discussion around that to ensure that we're headed in the right direction. And it's important to note in the calendar that you've received, throughout this process, we have planned for proactive and continuous communication with the board, so that when there is something on one of our strategic plans, for example, the CTE, possible reconstruction or construction or assessment of the assessment of that program, that we are providing information to you in the weekly update, and then providing an opportunity to come to you in a board workshop. And then, as in the case of the CTE program, providing 3 more opportunities to come to you face-to-face to have those conversations in a workshop setting before bringing the recommendation to you in December. So as we've built the plans, we've also paid very close attention to ensuring that the district goals and priorities and those evaluation metrics that we're responsible for, that it's not a one-time communication update and then a recommendation to the board. But there's really that opportunity to have conversations and to make those adjustments as necessary and then come back to you before a recommendation is made. And then along the way to be providing updates to the board on any of the work that's being done or the adjustments that are being done, and certainly those quarterly updates on the plan. So that is what you can expect as we move forward in terms of the planning and communication process. As I said, the immediate next step will be the end of September. You'll receive information and a copy of the strategic plan in the September board update, and then we'll be making that presentation to you in the October board meeting.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Martinez. Let's see if the trustees have any questions. Mr. Rice.
Thank you for a very nice report, Ms. Martinez.
Welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Mr. George?
Just curious, wonderful presentation, that is very nice. The only question I have is the core competencies and tightly held expectations. We could put together the best plan, but how do you make sure these are implemented all across the board? And you give me some information, give us some information, but can you explain a little more detail?
Certainly. With the core competencies, we would want to see our development plans for leadership or our development plans for teachers or certainly our performance, our development plans on an individual basis, being able to identify the areas where an employee or for myself, I might be in a weak area that I would want to grow in an area of, let's say, inspiring others. Then that could be professional learning for an employee or for self, and certainly within the hiring process to ensure that we're hiring or we're looking at candidates who align with those core competencies. So once people are onboarded, they are honest, they're a good communicator, they're inspiring others, they're a collaborator, and they're innovative. And I know that Kermit and his group are working on profiles to help to assess candidates coming on board. Looking in the plans to make sure that there's opportunity for those continuous development discussions with our employees so that as we guide and coach folks within our own departments and certainly teachers, that we're looking for those competencies within our employees and we're helping to develop them, and that's just an ongoing conversation and embedded within what we're about and what we're doing. So I would look for evidence within the plans, and I know that as we talk through the plans in E-Team, we'll be looking for that evidence that it ties to the core competencies, that there's development and opportunities for discussion around the core competencies. And with regard to the tightly held expectations, that's kind of a filtration system as we plan our work to make sure that we are focused on learning. We're focused on creating and maintaining a collaborative culture. So as we look at the plans and we have those discussions within E-Team and then certainly with you, we would want to make sure that whatever we're doing aligns with those 4 areas so that it is in support of creating and sustaining a positive culture. It is related to work around promoting a safe and secure environment, that we've covered, that what we're doing is covered within those plans and not an outlier or not in support or alignment of what we hold dear.
And also when it comes to different campuses, there could be the expectation could be different and also the need could be different. How do you personalize that based on that campus, for example?
The campus strategic plans or the campus improvement plans are worked the Department of School Leadership, curriculum, and the Department of Accountability review the data. They make sure that the plans are aligned to the needs that the data presents with regard to student assessment data, the culture and climate surveys, the engagement survey data, and then that those specific plans align with what the campus needs to put in place to drive improvement and drive forward. And then I know Department of School Leadership monitors those plans and monitors the measures within those plans to make sure that progress is being made.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes, and in regard to that last question, you're not necessarily looking at different strategic plans for different campuses, correct?
No, not during this process. We're looking at the campus plans support the district goals and priorities and student achievement and growth and development with the employees, and they are created each year. In fact, they have been created and finalized and submitted and drive the budget on the campuses. But I do want to say that they're important because we need to make sure that everything is in alignment. So I work very closely with the Department of Accountability and certainly with Department of School Leadership to make sure that everything is aligned, because the support from central office, for example, curriculum, would be in support of what is happening on those campus plans to help increase student achievement on those campuses, right, or fill the gaps within the
all
areas.
Surrounding the district strategic plan.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. That was very nice. We'll look forward to updates next month and the month after, it sounds like. So
thank you all.
Thank you very much. That concludes our information items for tonight. So we'll move on to closed session. The board will now meet in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act for purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all matters and subjects authorized by law, as well as regarding personally identifiable information about a public school student. The board is now convened in closed session.